Great. Hello, everyone. I should say hello again to a lot of you, and hello for the first time to maybe some of you just joining us. Welcome again to the DCM Patient and Family Virtual Conference, the first of its kind. We're very glad you're here. As a reminder, for any information about DCM, please go to our website at dcmfoundation.org. We're very excited about this session number 3 that we have teed up for you today, so let's get rolling. Next slide. For those of you just joining or who may not be familiar with us, our mission is to provide hope and support to patients and families with DCM through research, advocacy, and education. Next slide. A couple of quick housekeeping items. All microphones are on mute. We will ask you to submit questions in the Q&A feature of Zoom after the presentations are given. And you can kind of plop them in at any point here. We do love questions. If you have any audio issues, please check your speaker volume. Next. So session number 3, here we are. Today's session number 3, this is about, we're going to have patient-to-patient panel discussions. We have 2 different panels set up for you this afternoon, where you're going to hear from patients about their personal experiences with DCM. In our first panel, they will be talking about successfully living with DCM. And on our second panel, they will be talking about self-advocacy. So next. Great. On our first panel today, we have 3 presenters, Steve Fitek, Adam Burkhart, and Cecilia Poole. And Steve is going to talk with us today about fitness and nutrition. Steve was diagnosed with DCM in 2011. He is a heart transplant recipient that he received in March of 2021. Adam is going to be talking with us about living a full life after transplant, and we'll find out just how full shortly. Adam is a heart transplant recipient, which he received in September of 2000. And Cecilia Poole is going to talk with us about maintaining a healthy, productive life. She was diagnosed with DCM in 2021, and when she also received a CRTD. Next slide. So the first presenter for today's first panel is Steve Fitek, and he's going to again be speaking about leading an active life with DCM. And by the way, we have patients from all over the country today. So if anyone feels comfortable telling where you're from, I think it's nice for folks to hear. So thanks for being with us, Steve. And we'd love to hear your story.
Hello, Steve Fitek here. First of all, I want to thank the DCM Foundation for the opportunity to be here today. My journey with DCM begins pretty much in 2011, about 11 years ago. I was age 52. I got diagnosed with congestive heart failure, then with DCM. Prior to that, I actually had no clue whatsoever that I had heart disease. And I was very active all my life, all the way up until until I got to that point in 2011. From 2011 through 2022, that 10, 11-year period has been an interesting journey. The journey went from an EF of 50%, slowly declined over a 10-year period. In addition to the DCM, I had atrial fibrillation with chronic, and also ventricular tachycardia going on. In 2015, I had a cardiac arrest and an ICD implanted. After that, I continued to have the EF decline. When we got to July 2020, we finally got to the point where the EF had dropped to 10%. And I had to have an LVAD placed as a bridge to transplant. But what I would like to say is that during this whole period from 2011 all the way to 2020, I continued to, and I've always been very active in my life. I've always had routines with the gym. I had a schedule, and I've always felt that working out made me feel better no matter what I was feeling, no matter how, as things declined over the years, I continued to insist upon working out, being active, working full time. Um, I had a schedule. I found that if you put it on your calendar, every day you put your workout on your calendar, sometimes that makes it easier for you to live up to that commitment. I also had a place where I worked out that was a 10-year type arrangement over the time. So I had workout buddies and folks that I enjoyed being with, that encouraged me, even as my EF declined, even as it became harder and more difficult. It was a good environment. It made you feel good. Support system was always very good about the whole thing too. My spouse, my workout buddies were always great support systems for working out, continuing to be active. I love hiking and biking because in Tucson, Arizona, in the winter months in particular, hiking and biking are incredibly good activities. And yeah, I mean, throughout the journey, it became more difficult to do this, but I always felt better about myself. I always felt better health-wise if I just kept moving much as I could keep moving. You're looking at a slide right now. We're down there in the lower left-hand corner. I got the mask on. I'm in a little gym. You see the backpack that I have on there? I have straps on. That's a backpack. That's when I had my LVAD actually. And when I had my LVAD, and I don't know how familiar everyone is with that LVAD, so it was a pump in the heart that's a bridge to transplant. But I was still out there, still trying to keep moving, keep working out, do a mile on a treadmill, try to get up to 2 miles on a treadmill. Yeah, during the both the pandemic and the LVAD. So it made me feel very good to be active and to stay active. And when I got to the point to where I had to get the LVAD, got to the point where I had to have a transplant. The fact that I was active, moving, and kept moving, they were all good things, going forward. The picture there on the right, that's at my gym. I've been there for 10 years through the whole journey. When it comes to nutrition, I'll be the first to admit that, as you can see on the slide there, that I'm not perfect when it comes to my nutrition. I definitely limit my salts and my sodium. Definitely take a whole lot more water and fluids. I got more fruits, more veggies. I almost never eat out at a fast food place because it's just not good. But I must say that when it comes to nutrition as well, my spouse, she has always been one that would be quick to tell me and remind me, you're eating junk. Because I do have this desire for ice cream like you won't believe. So I will admit that I'm not perfect, but the strong support system is critical in my mind, and hopefully everyone has a good support system to help you stay active and help you stay on top of your diet, stay on top of your foods, etc. Next slide. And so, sorry if I sound like I'm rushing this. I'm actually a little nervous. I'm not. I don't present very often.
You're doing great, Steve. You're doing great. I'm right here with you. You're doing fantastic.
Today, of course, life today for me has changed significantly because I had a heart transplant last year. But even before the heart transplant, even with the DCM, I worked full time. I was fortunate. I'm an accountant and I sit at the desk for a living. So I'm not outside, not being physical. And with COVID in 2020, I was working from home from that point forward. So, working full time makes me feel good, makes me feel productive. If you can work 50%, you can work 75%. I mean, there were times during my journey that I worked 50%. There was times where I worked 75%. I couldn't always work 100% without question. But I always felt productive. And I always felt good to be able to work. On top of that, I am married. I have 5 children total. 3 of mine, 2 stepchildren, 3 grandchildren, and 3 huskies. Which the huskies are biggest pain in the neck, but that they keep you active. Walking the Husky, as a matter of fact, a couple hours from now, I have a new Husky puppy that I'm going to get to do some training for a couple hours. So, all in all, not to be too quick, as far as I'm concerned, DCM is not something that necessarily, you need to be full. You need to live an active life. You need to keep moving. For me, it always made me feel better. And I admit, early on, first diagnosis, I still had a strong EF, and I kept moving. And over a 10-year period, it slowly declined and slowly slowed down my movement. But I kept going, kept at it, etc. And I always had a strong support system, family, my spouse, and it was always kept me going all the way to the end. So that's pretty much what I have to say today.
Thank you so much, Steve. We really appreciate you sharing your story.
And now we go on to Adam.
And Adam's going to talk about living a full life after heart transplant. So again, thanks, Steve. We'll see you again in a little bit at the Q&A. Adam, on to you.
Thanks, Jan. Thanks, Steve. Great job. Good afternoon. My name's Adam Burkhart. I just turned 40 years old. Cannot believe I'm that old now. It's definitely gone by fast. My story starts in 1988. I was born in 82. I was diagnosed with familial dilated non-obstructive cardiomyopathy, a form of, DCM. Very normal childhood, just took meds, was under the close watchful eye of pediatricians and cardiologists at Nationwide Children's Hospital. In and out of the hospital just for tests for the next several years. I was actually playing in an indoor soccer game I think it was in 1991. Or I'm sorry, 1999, and just couldn't run, couldn't perform, had a hard time breathing, thought it was my asthma. My mother, being an RN at the time, she knew it was something more, took me to the emergency room, and they said I was in congestive heart failure, and I was only 17 at the time. Nationwide Children's Hospital did not have a cardiac heart transplant program at that time. So they transferred me under the care of doctors at the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center, and followed up with them for a couple months. And finally in March, they said it's time to get serious about a heart transplant. Honestly, one of the scariest days of my life, but also knew that it was something I needed, and embraced it, and waited almost 7 months in the hospital until September 14th of 2000. I received my life-saving gift, and still here today. We later found out that I had TPM1, the genetic mutation. And other family members, I come from a very large family. My mom was one of 13 children, and 11 were living. My mom just passed away 2 years ago, not heart complications. It was, sadly, it was cancer, but, she lived a very good life. Her siblings and a few of my cousins also have TPM1, and no transplants, just a lot of medications and doctor visits and stuff for them, but they live a very normal, active life. And today I do the same, live a very normal, active, busy life. And, it's great. It's amazing. Next slide, please. So I received my heart transplant. It was 22 years ago. I just had my anniversary. I still take medication. When I first got out of the hospital, it was about 70 some pills a day. And that was 22 years ago. Now I think it's down to about 25 or so. I feel absolutely amazing. Every day is truly a gift. I don't mean that in a Hallmark card expression. It truly is. I'm just absolutely thankful and just overwhelmed with happiness. Very, very lucky and happy to be here. I married my beautiful wife, Kaylee, in October 2010. Together, we absolutely love to travel. I'm trying to get her into golf. I don't know if that's a good thing because that's kind of my time away, but she seems to enjoy it. We have a lot of family, a lot of friends. Certainly, I think with the medical advancements that have been made over the years, there's so much things out there that can not just save your life, but make you feel better. But truly, one thing I found is laughter, humor, having a sense of humor, just enjoying being alive is, always putting a smile on your face just seems to make me feel better. I love laughing with family and friends, and it just makes the days easier. Such a busy world we live in, and I just kind of try to tend more to laugh every single day. So next slide, please. I work full time. I was in construction for almost 20 years, and being 22 years post heart transplant kind of, definitely got me thinking more of the environment I was in, the dust, the debris, things of that nature. It was great work, great learning experience, but still just kind of also needed to realize the cards I was dealt. And now I work for a logistics company. I'm a account specialist for a logistics company. Absolutely love it. It's right here in Columbus, Ohio. I just moved south. I told my wife, Kaylee, when we bought our old house, that next time we move, I do not like winter, and I would rather be out in Arizona with Steve, or ideally down in Florida. I love the beach and ocean and stuff, but we found a little bit bigger of a house for our growing family, and we moved about 500 yards south, which not exactly as far south as I would rather be, but hey, I'm inching my way in the right direction. Together, Kaylee and I, we have 4 beautiful children. Quinn, our oldest daughter, she'll be 10 in October. Maddie, she's named after my donor. My donor's name was Matthew, and since we had girl, we were kind of thinking a boy might not be in our future to name him Matthew. So we named her Madden, Mattyn. She is 8, she'll be 9 in January. And then we have our angel Roe, who is forever 4 months. She passed away 3 years ago on September 19th, the day before my birthday. And actually today is her 3-year anniversary for funeral. But it's, she did pass away from cardiac issues. She also had TPM1 and RYR2, but she was a sweet little girl. But in her loss, I feel that she gifted us, my son, his name's Nash. He's almost 2 years old, and the terrible twos set in about a year ago. He is an active, destructive little boy in every sense of the word. He's awesome. He's funny, just very, very rambunctious. I like to tell people that I don't just live a full life. Mine is overflowing. We've got, like so many people, I mean, it's not just me, but we go from cheerleading to volleyball to chasing Nash to weddings. I mean, just very, very rarely do we have a free weekend or a open Sunday, open Saturday. Like, it's just, there's always something going on. So we definitely stay on the move, stay active, but not complaining. I wouldn't have it any other way. It's just very, very busy. Next slide, please. Oh, and that's it.
Thank you so
So,
much, Adam.
yep,
We
thank you.
really appreciate that. No, it's fantastic. Go ahead if you want to introduce Cecilia. I just wanted to say thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Yeah, the next presenter is Cecilia Poole, and have at it, Cecilia. Thank you.
That was nice. Thank you so much. I really liked all the things that both of you have said so far. So I am Cecilia Poole, and next slide, please. I'm talking about a healthy and productive life. My brief history is that I was diagnosed actually about 1.5 years ago. I have a baseline of POTS syndrome, which gave me some palpitations that I was accustomed to living with, but a normal, busy working life. I just turned 69 years old and I'm retired, but the results of my echocardiogram 1.5 years ago showed that I had dilated cardiomyopathy when I went in just to ask for an EKG because I was having more palpitations. Not tired, winded a little bit, but I had a mask on and I was walking my dog a few times a day. So anyway, I ended up shortly thereafter receiving a CRT-D, which is a resynchronization device for the heart with a defibrillator. And I could do a lot more than I could do physically before I got that. It was really a nice feeling of being able to feel some energy again. And by contrast, I wasn't even aware that I didn't have a lot of energy. It was such a slow and subtle onset. So the emotional impact I thought was really interesting because I had retired and I was ready to do all kinds of things. I'm historically very active and driving my friends crazy because I always like to do lots of things all the time. The diagnosis was a bit of a shock. I had worked as an RN for over 40 years, and luckily I had seen so many patients have the ability to overcome many very challenging situations. And for me, I just remembered that some of the things they taught me. And a lot of it was just coming to a reckoning. And I liked what Adam said about cards that were dealt. And I think that's a step that people who have this diagnosis go through. It takes about 1 year to get adjusted at my age to this diagnosis, to the idea that you actually were dealt that hand. And I learned that year information from the nurses at cardiac rehab who said, yeah, all of our DCM patients take about 1 year before they can kind of reckon with this and figure out what their next step is. But you can live a healthy and productive life. Next slide, please. So what I found very interesting, of course, as I say, my background as a professional nurse, I do a lot of reading, and I'm lucky enough to have a good support group, lots of friends, lots of family. But what was interesting was to find that in order for one to increase your lifespan with DCM and to decrease your hospitalizations, there are multiple studies that show you need to not feel alone. And they define feeling alone as loneliness, and not just that you have a lot of people around you, but that you feel like you're connecting with someone who's kind of sharing what your process is with you, you're feeling supported. And the two previous speakers spoke very much about feeling supported, and you can see how well they're thriving given their challenges, and it's wonderful. Support groups are available. The DCM Foundation, they'll be expanding more in 2023, offers support groups. And I found also you could check with your local hospital, talk to your doctor's office, your cardiologist's office, call the local library, ask for the resource librarian if she could help you find some cardiac resources, and even look at the American Heart Association. But that adjustment period to the diagnosis is real. I remember thinking that I wondered about my own mortality when I learned this. I wasn't depressed, but I found I was really kind of wondering what was the meaning of how sick I was. And fortunately, with a lot of support and a lot of good information, I've found that there are some simple ways to approach this. And the number one priority really is to stay medically as stable as possible. This means that you don't push yourself outside of your margins of good functioning. And listen carefully to what your doctor's medical plan is. You want to clarify and simplify it. So make sure that you repeat back to your physician, am I understanding correctly that this is what you want me to do? And this is when you want to see me next. Because everyone's been stressed past the pandemic. And I found that partnering with my physicians is really a delight. I really enjoy that. And my questions are answered. So once your health is stable, it's a lot easier to be productive. And it's important that you know what your doctor wants you to track and when to report back. Those are very important aspects. Take your medications as ordered. As I said, I do a lot of reading. Unfortunately, an awful lot of people mix up their medications and don't take them exactly as ordered and they end up in the hospital. So if you get yourself a Medi set or something you can put weekly, put the dosages aside weekly and just take them on a daily basis, I think that might make it a lot easier. I've seen that with patients over the years, and I do it myself. You want to maintain your weight so you don't stress your heart more. You got to move, and gentlemen before me, thank you. That is so true. Move, 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 even if you don't feel like it. At my age, I have found that I didn't feel so much like exercising, but I do walk 1 to 2 miles at least once a week. But I will take shorter walks more frequently than that, maybe a quarter mile, half a mile, 2 or 3 times a week. And just give myself every opportunity to get up and move, not just sit around. What I love to do is paint. So that's given me a lot of excuse to be sedentary. And so I've got to keep my Apple Watch that gives me reminders to stand, which I appreciate. Next slide, please. So the other things that I was hearing from these gentlemen before me, which they clearly were successful at, is to build success into your day. Some people are working. Some people are, like myself, no longer working. But I find if I keep a list, I write constantly a list all day long of all the things that I'd like to get done. And then at evening time, I'll I will review those and decide what really needs to be done. And then I'll simplify what would be the easiest way to get these things done or the best ways to do them and what really doesn't need to be done. I am not in the same boat as the 2 gentlemen before me who have full days. I'm not at that place in my age or health, but I'm doing very well. I don't want full days anymore. I've had many years of that. So I schedule in pleasant, quiet times as well. And I set priorities. Couldn't do everything that I did before, but I found simple things like taking a warm shower before I go to bed because I'm tired anyway. Put the clothes out that I'm going to wear the next day. I wake up ready to start the day, go out on appointments, go see friends. The occupational therapy profession has already spent so much time reviewing and inventing ways for people to conserve energy. So if that's where you are with your DCM, please do a little web search on occupational therapy tips to conserve energy. You'll be surprised that you'll see volumes of information of simple things, just like having a sit down when you shower, sit down when you shower, sit down when you shave, while you're having a little chair in your kitchen or a stool at your kitchen sink saves some energy. And this is probably the most important part that I probably should have impressed even earlier, but when you get your diagnosis, you really need to prepare yourself physically, mentally, and spiritually to go through this. And you can do it, but it really does take a reckoning of the hand that you were dealt, and it takes courage, and it takes willingness to do what it takes to get yourself better and to live the best and most productive life that you can. And I hope that the tips that I gave you earlier are helpful to you. They've certainly worked for me, and I'm enjoying my life. I've got another grandchild coming very soon. I'm very excited about that. And you will have better days ahead. So that's the end of my talk. And I'm thinking that we're sending this on to
Back to me.
Back to you. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you, Cecilia. Thank you so much. Great job. Thank you all for sharing. And we're going to go into the Q&A portion now. And Heather, if we could have all of the panelists on maybe. And we're just going to do, an open Q&A now. So if folks would please put your questions into the Q&A feature of Zoom. And it could be on anything related to these folks' experience living with DCM. They all have a variety of number of years in dealing with this experience of being a DCM patient. So please put your questions in. First and foremost, let's see, we have a question. Have any of the presenters' children inherited their DCM genetics, assuming it's genetic? And if so, how have you helped them process their own journey? Who would like to start? Adam?
Yeah, that's fine.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Yes. My oldest daughter, Quinn, she has inherited TPM1. She is on medication. She is watched very closely by Nationwide Children's Hospital. She does take medication morning and night, and she's also followed up every 6 months with echoes, EKGs, and she recently just had a cardiac MRI. It's showing a little bit of decline in her function. Nothing too worrisome or anything just yet. Hopefully it doesn't. Obviously, hopefully, it's just growing. She's very active. She still feels very good. She's very good about taking her medicine, but she did inherit it. And obviously, my daughter, Ro, she had TPM1 and RYR2. And also my son, Nash, he inherited TPM1 as well. But he is just watched yearly, no cause for concerns, no medication or restrictions. So we definitely keep an eye on him. My daughter, Madden, she tested negative for any mutation. So.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Steve, Cecilia, do you have anything to share on that?
Well, in my case, my mother's got DCM, my brother's got DCM. My 3 biological children, my daughter was tested and she does not. My 2 boys have decided that they're impervious and will continue to not get tested until they get a little older, maybe.
Impervious. Yeah, we all felt that way at one time, right?
That's the way I was when I was their age, quite frankly.
Chip off the old block. Cecilia, do you have anything to add to that? No? Okay, perfect. All right, let's move on to the next question. Thank you all. Adam or Steve, having both had a heart transplant, how is your ability to handle physical exercise post-transplant? Do you have any restrictions? Steve, let's start with you. You've had a transplant more recently.
Yeah, but I mean, pre-transplant, post-transplant, clearly post-transplant is significantly better. I have very little to no physical limitations. I'm 63 years old, and I go out and I hit 5, 6, 7 miles on a trail hiking now. I get on my bike, I go to the gym. Recently I got 10 tons of landscaping material that I've been hauling around in a wheelbarrow landscaping my yard. Quite frankly, physically, I'm as good as I've been in a long time post-transplant. Life's not perfect by any means, but it's great. If that answers the question as far as I'm concerned.
Fantastic, thank you. Adam?
Just like Steve said, very little limitations as far as activity. I snow ski, enjoy swimming, golfing, chasing the kids around. Very, very little. It's actually amazing from how I felt in that soccer game at age 17 to now being 40 and 22 years post heart transplant, I can do so much more now at 40 than when I could at 17. So
Wow.
just,
Yeah.
yeah. You know, I can definitely tell myself, I think like anybody, you know, your limitations. Like when you start getting tired, you know, sure, go to bed, you know. But as far as, yeah, feel great.
Oh, that's interesting. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Adam. I mean, the number one and only real issue after post-transplant for me is actually the medications more than anything else. But physical activity, not a problem.
Fantastic. That's great news. We have a note here from Robin, a fellow DCM HFPEF, which we just heard in the last session, patient that is so glad to see all your recovery stories and positive outlook on your future. Have any of you participated in any heart failure studies for future treatments for heart failure patients? If you're uncomfortable answering that question, that's fine. If anybody does want to answer that question, just chime in. No? Okay.
Nope, I think Cecilia's on mute.
Oh, you're on mute. Yep. You want to, yeah, there you go. Can you unmute?
Yeah, I could. Thank you. At the time my CRTD was inserted, I was at the Mayo Clinic and they were doing a study on metabolomics. They were looking at people who had CRTDs inserted, and they were looking at a small sample of the cardiac tissue, and they were trying to correlate basically the end products of metabolism that were indicating what was happening in the cardiology realm. And they were correlating it with how improved the ejection fraction would be a year later. And mine is significantly. I was at 24 and I'm beyond 50 right now. So I fit into the good group, lucky me. But I don't think that study's been completed yet. But I would not hesitate to do almost any study, almost.
Okay, fantastic. And of course, as we just heard in the last session, it's really patient involvement in these studies that's so critical. And not in all cases, but in a lot of cases, it's really helpful for people to know if they have a genetic mutation that's caused their DCM, which helps direct them to studies that might be available to them. Let's go on. I am 68 and was diagnosed a year ago. How do you deal with the fact that you now have a heart disease? This question is for Cecilia. I am very active. I take 10 pills a day to deal with the DCM.
Well, that's a great question because I was there. But Adam, I think, just said what was kind of the golden point of it. And that is that when you're tired, rest. You have to deal with the hands that you've been dealt and reckon with this, learn all you can about it. Congratulations that you're listening and participating in this wonderful Zoom seminar and that you found the DCM. Learn all you can and understand that first year is pretty much understood to be the toughest. You're going to have some reckonings and get some good support, refresh yourself on what has been said today, and have courage. Have courage and take heart from what all of us are here to share with you. That's my best advice. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think that's great advice. Yeah, this is an interesting and good question. How do you live considering that the pandemic is still going on? Do you go to the theater, etc., where a lot of people sit close to each other indoors, or do you avoid such things? And I'll just kind of go round robin here. And again, anybody who has any questions, please put them into the Q&A and we'll try to get them answered. So Steve, let's start with you. I saw you in the gym there with your LVAD, with your mask on. And you had mentioned to me when we put the slide deck together that was somehow you were able to get into the gym before hours. So that was great.
Yeah, I had a very long-term relationship with the gym, and I was able to get in before hours, especially during the pandemic. And at that point in time, I had the LVAD, and still masked up and wiped everything down, even though there was no one in the place. To be careful.
Right.
Without question, like all of us, when 2020 hit, pretty much isolated for a long period of time. The 2021 transplant came about, and being immune suppressed, or having the immune suppression drugs, I continued to be wary of people and wary of crowds. But that said, as time has progressed, being vaccinated, being boosted 3 times now, etc., I do get out and about more than I used to in the last 6 months, let's say, getting a tiny bit more comfortable being out and about. I still try to be cautious. I still try to avoid large crowds, but yet, family events, etc., I'm more than comfortable with.
Okay, excellent, fantastic. And actually, we have heard from some DCM patients who have had COVID, and they were able to get treatment right away, and they were vaccinated, fully vaccinated, and they did very well through it. So, just as another little word of hope there.
And speaking of COVID, I did get COVID actually in June of this year, which is a year and 3 months after my transplant. And I got the monoclonal antibody infusion at the recommendation of the Mayo Clinic who did my transplant. And it was, quite frankly, I've had worse colds than I had COVID. But that was just my experience. It's not to say that, don't worry about it by any means. That was just my personal experience.
Yeah, and we're glad you're doing great, Steve. Adam, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, when COVID first came about, and before they really, or anybody really knew much about it, it scared me. I won't lie. I don't know how to say it. I was pretty much a hermit for a while. Took some time off work. It scared me. Was in direct contact with my transplant coordinator at Ohio State, and she said I was doing the right thing, so I continued to do that. And she said definitely lay low if you can, until a vaccine is available. And once the vaccine became available, and then like Steve said, I've also had 3 boosters. Ohio State's actually telling me to get a 4th booster here coming into fall, with like a flu shot as well. But after I had the first vaccine and then another booster, I'm too social of a person. I don't like being alone. So my wife and I, especially like on an airplane or something like that, I will wear a mask. But we definitely go to the movie theater with the kids. My brother and I actually went to the Final Four in New Orleans back in, I think it was April or May. That was a lot of people, and I certainly wore a mask. But I just kind of feel like I've been given a gift, and to hunker down in my basement and live in fear, that's not me. You only live once. So I'm very, very much more active now than what I was at the beginning of the pandemic. And maybe it's luck. I don't know, but I've been very lucky, obviously. But I did get COVID. I had the antibody infusion as well, but one of the lucky ones. So still here, and I could probably be more careful, in all honesty, but I enjoy every day also. So
You're trying to live your life now.
Yep.
I understood. Actually, I'm going to thank you for that. I'm going to move on to a next question. Cecilia, actually, you had mentioned OT tips to conserve energy. Can you share some of those that worked for you? And are there times of day that are better for you than others, and in terms of being more active and getting things done?
Sure. I know that everyone's different, but I'm really a morning person. I've got loads of energy in the morning. And if I have something that I really would like to devote energy to, I will plan that for the morning. And I'll also plan times that I can rest. I don't mind waiting places if it means that I could get 2 appointments done in one day, and that I just enjoy sketching in my car or walking around a little bit more. But mainly I plan to treat myself well. The other simple things, I learned with a simple S hook that you can get at the hardware store to hang up my hair dryer. And I don't have to have my hands above my head, especially when I really was early with this. It was difficult to just have the energy to do things like that. I have seen that on the OT sites, they will recommend things like grabbers even that are maybe 1 or 2 feet long that you can squeeze, and it can get things down from the top shelf or from the bottom shelf. And the simple thing like just planning in advance what you're going to wear the next day and take the shower the night before, then you hop up and you're out the door in 10 minutes versus getting delayed by a shower, or also not taking a hot shower. I think a lot of people with DCM find that that's a little difficult on their cardiac system. So a warm shower or a tepid shower doesn't make the heart work so hard. But there are all kinds of things like that. I really urge people to take a look at what even pamphlets from the UK are available. It's kind of amazing, and everyone's got a different energy level. These 2 gentlemen are like go-getters. It's pretty impressive. But I would say for people who are just tuning in and just coming diagnosed with this, there are lots of helpful things.
And every patient is different, and I just want to reiterate that. We hear that all the time. And on our next panel coming up, actually, we're going to hear from Stephanie Fallon, and she's been living with DCM for more than 40 years. She was diagnosed 40 years ago, but she's shared some of those same tips with me that, and the whole taking a shower and drying your hair before bed. I mean, men don't have to worry so much about the time it takes to dry your hair. Steve, you're funny.
Yeah.
But for women, it can take at least 10 minutes to dry your hair, and that can be exhaustive. And so I know that for a lot of folks, it is easier to take that shower right before bed and get ready. Because you're going to be tired anyhow, and go right to bed, and then you can wake up and use that morning energy to get things done. So really all great tips. I can't thank you all enough for being here with us on a Saturday. I just want to say, Adam, a special thank you, because Adam is on his way to a wedding, speaking of events. So thank you for taking time out. And I also wanted to say, Adam's sense of humor runs through everything he does. And when we were preparing for this event, he kept saying, "Oh, okay, so a week from Sunday, right? I'm all set." And I think my face just hit the floor because this was just a few days ago and I panicked. So anyhow, keep up that sense of humor, and thank you all for everything you do to help support the foundation and for being here today with us. So we are going to say goodbye for now to panel number 1. I feel like I'm on the Newlywed Show or something from years ago. Great. And so if we can share the deck again, Heather, that would be fantastic. And next, we're going to be hearing from panel number 2. Our presenters are going to be talking about various aspects of self-advocacy. Today, we have Stephanie Fallon, Andrea Gavin, and we're going to be hearing from Sarah Schaff. Stephanie was diagnosed with DCM in 1982. I was just mentioning her story briefly. She's going to be speaking on getting the best care and when to seek a second opinion. Andrea Gavin was diagnosed with DCM in 2021, and she's going to be talking with us today about how to speak with healthcare professionals. And Sarah Schaff who couldn't be with us today, unfortunately, but she did submit a video, which is very informative. She was diagnosed in 2018, and she's going to be sharing tips about finances and insurance. Next slide. So first up is Stephanie. And Stephanie, we're so glad you could be here with us today. Stephanie's going to be sharing with us a little bit about her story of DCM and getting the best care and when to seek a second opinion. Stephanie, it's good to see you. Hi, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Good. I want to first,
I said, take it away.
oh, yeah. I was diagnosed at age 15, which was 40 years ago. And I was diagnosed. The reason why I was diagnosed or went to the doctor was because I was trying out for the tennis team. I couldn't run as many laps around the field as everyone else could. So they sent me to the school nurse, and she thought she heard something a little weird. So I ended up at a cardiologist, and this was in Southern California. And, back then, echoes were coming out. It would just kind of like dinosaur age, machines and everything. And they said I had dilated cardiomyopathy and I had 5 years to live. Well, they always tell you you have 5 years to live or you need a transplant. But don't panic, because I have lived 40 plus years without a transplant. Yes, I have been in stage C and stage D my whole life, or since I was 15. So I have had a hard time with it. I have a lot of ups and downs, but that's okay. And this is the life I've been given, and I do the best I can. I have 2 daughters that have cardiomyopathy and 1 grandchild that has cardiomyopathy. We have the MYH7 mutation. So we have dilated cardiomyopathy, and one of my daughters and my grandchild also have left ventricular non-compaction cardiomyopathy. And I've always strived to get the very best care for myself and my family. Next slide, please. Okay, so when you first get your diagnosis, you need to really search for a heart transplant doctor, a cardiologist, or a heart failure cardiologist. And you can locate one of those with a list of heart failure clinics that's going to come late this year. So you can research them online, and it'll say if they're board certified in heart failure, transplants, but the board certification is very, very important. And if you just ask the nurse or the receptionist, they probably don't know if their physician is board certified. So you really do need to look them up or ask them, because they'll tell you. I always consider going to a teaching hospital, because I just think that the more ears and hands that you can have figuring you out, the professors, the students, they usually go into a boardroom and they talk just specifically about you. And that is very important. I always think a team approach, you always end up getting great care. Next slide, please. Okay, the second opinion, I know gets kind of scary for a lot of people, and they're kind of embarrassed and they don't want to talk to their cardiologist about it. But doctors are well aware that people are going to get second opinions. And a lot of these hospitals, especially transplant hospitals, all you have to do is email them your records or your text results, and they will email you back with their opinion. I have done this a few times, and so far they all say I'm on great medicine and my family's being well taken care of. And I really like our doctors that we have now, and it's your health. So be your own advocate. And when you have children and grandchildren that have DCM, it's really important for you to really receive the best care, and for someone who understands that this can be genetic. And I would like to hand this over to Andrea.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephanie. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
And Andrea's going to talk with us today about talking with health practitioners.
Thank you. And thank you, Stephanie. So my name is Andrea Gavin. I'm 41 years old. I live outside of the Washington, D.C. area, and I was diagnosed last year with DSP, a genetic mutation that can cause DCM. But my family's experience with cardiomyopathy started long before that. About 40 years ago, when my father was right around my age, he was diagnosed with a low EF, or ejection fraction. And for decades, until he was in his mid-60s, he lived an active life with no symptoms until he developed some symptoms of heart failure in his mid-60s and got a pacemaker. He sadly passed away from congestive heart failure at the age of 76 in 2018. But despite going to a top hospital where he received excellent care, there was never mention of a possible genetic cause or a recommendation for familial screening. So my diagnosis was purely by chance. I've never had a symptom. I was actually in the best shape of my life when I was diagnosed, running half marathons and exercising. But an urgent care doctor one day, I always put in my record that my dad had cardiomyopathy. An urgent care doctor, when I went to get a prescription refilled for something unrelated, said, why haven't you ever been to a cardiologist? I went to a cardiologist and I had an abnormal echo that set off a series of events resulting in my diagnosis. So I'm very grateful for that. But, I was shocked, coming off of my father's death and feeling great. I was really shocked. So I was really starting from a place of extreme shock and fear. For life, I've always had a fear of doctors and needles. Before even getting pregnant, I went to exposure therapy to, get a little desensitized to it. And I was scared. I was fortunately referred to a wonderful transplant and heart failure doctor, but that's not, a super reassuring term. I was terrified. Since then, doctors actually shared with me, a goal of heart failure doctors to keep you out of heart failure, which I find a really reassuring way to think about it. But it really started from a place of shock and fear going into my first, interaction with now my doctor. Next slide, please. So, now I'm about a year in, and I definitely, I really appreciate how Cecilia in the previous panel said it takes a year to kind of let this all sink in and deal with it. But I think I've come a long way, and I've gathered a lot of tips for how to navigate medical appointments. And the first thing is to be prepared. And if that's your first appointment, it might just be being mentally prepared to walk in. When I walk in, I'm usually the youngest person by several decades, and it's not always a comfortable place to be. For my first appointment, I brought my husband with me, for emotional support, but also to be another set of eyes and ears. There's a lot of information to take in when you go to an appointment. It's a whole different language, terms, numbers, and I wasn't really familiar with any of it. So bringing my husband with me enabled him to be the person to sit down, take notes, and enabled me to be present and focus and ask questions and just to get through the appointment. So I highly recommend bringing a friend or family member to support you. But if you can't, you can always, ask if you can record your appointment so you can refer back to what was discussed in the appointment. Since early on, I now go to appointments by myself, but when I was referred to an electrophysiologist, I brought my husband back in because I knew that I would be having to take in a whole new set of information, terms, and that would impact future decisions. So I brought him back in at that point. But taking notes is critical. I always have my notebook out. I write down terms, different things to look up, numbers, and sometimes it just takes a while to sink in and you want to refer back to it. And then I come with questions written out. When you're there, it's your time and you need to, be an advocate for yourself and ask your questions. I truly feel there are no dumb questions. Most of us do not have a medical background. And I ask the same question. Sometimes I ask the same question multiple times through multiple appointments. You're in huge receiving mode, trying to take in a lot of information. So sometimes you ask a different question in a different way and you get a different answer from the doctor that hits you in a new way. So make sure you ask all the questions you came with and any that come to mind, even if you're a little afraid to hear the answer. I think it's your time and to get it out there. And as part of that, it's critical to know your next steps when you're leaving. We're all busy, and the doctors are busy. Their systems are busy. So do you have labs? Are there medication changes? Who's scheduling your scan? Do you have to call? When do you need to come back? What is an emergency that you need to call them for? What can wait to your next appointment? Just make sure you have a really clear set of instructions to know what your next step is moving forward. And then for me, when I'm done with my appointment, my doctor uploads his summaries to a patient portal. So I will go on the patient portal, download his notes and review them to make sure that I had the same understanding of the results in the appointment as he did. That's also helpful, if there's any inconsistencies or questions, that's your chance to reach out when your appointment's still fresh and get clarification. If you are going to seek a second opinion, I always share my notes. So you want to make sure that what you're sharing matches up with your doctor's summary. And next slide. And just to go, this doesn't end. For me, in between appointments, I keep a note on my phone of questions that come up in between that aren't urgent. If I hear about a new study or a drug or a question, I keep them so I'm ready to go because, as Stephanie and others have said, you're your own advocate. It's your health. And the more knowledge that you have, the more you can participate in decisions about your healthcare and in shared decision-making with your doctor. These diseases or, my gene is pretty rare. There's not a textbook, you do ABC. There are different opinions and there are different choices that will come back to you as the patient. So the more you know, the more you can engage in these decisions. And Stephanie mentioned, second opinions and how it can be uncomfortable. And early on, I considered getting a second opinion and I actually felt like I was cheating on my doctor or, I didn't have faith in him. And when I asked him, his response was, of course, your care is a team sport. And he actually gave me names of different doctors to talk to. And I'm lucky enough that they're able to talk to each other, but I will say they have not all agreed. And once again, it comes back to you as the patient to kind of reconcile different opinions and make your choice. And I will say, if there's a doctor that does not feel comfortable with you getting a second opinion, in my opinion, that's a huge red flag. And the more information you have, the better and more empowered that you can be to guide your own care and make decisions. So thank you. And with that, I'll give it back to Jan for the video. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Andrea. We really appreciate you sharing your story with us all and all of those tips. I do encourage people to put any questions into the Q&A feature, and we're going to have a Q&A session shortly. First, we are going to listen to Sarah's story. Sarah Schaff, who was diagnosed with DCM at age 38, and she's going to share with us tips about finances and insurance. And so fingers crossed, the video will roll. Here we go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Schaff, and I'm really happy to be here with you today. I wanted to talk a little bit today about finances and insurance. So let me start off by telling you a little bit about my story. So I was diagnosed, probably as a lot of us were, pretty much out of the blue. I was diagnosed with DCM at 38 when I was undergoing some completely unrelated medical testing. And it was a pretty bad case. And so I had an ICD, an implantable cardioverter defibrillator, a year later. And the funny thing about this is the ICD, that procedure was actually my first medical procedure. I had never even broken a bone. So I learned a lot very quickly, kind of that steep slope of learning for a little bit about finances, how to handle them with a chronic medical condition, and also how to handle insurance. And I wanted to share some of those tips and tricks with you all today. So with that in mind, let's dive in. Let's talk a little bit about this side of treating DCM. So when we think about the considerations we have to keep in mind, I think the main thing or the place we want to start is just a recognition that medical care in the US is expensive. And so it really helps us financially if we have a plan. There's a real need for that when you're just trying to avoid a whole lot of stress and a whole lot of surprises. And when we think about what we need really good insurance. For most of us, it's going to come through an employer. And we need to understand what that insurance covers. So we need to understand which procedures are covered, which medications are covered, how much we're going to be paying out of pocket. That understanding takes a little bit of time, and it's really important for us to actually take the time to really go through and have a solid understanding of those ins and outs. So as a silly little example, if you're looking for a new job, you want to make sure that you don't only consider the characteristics of that job, the qualifications, the opportunities. You also want to consider if they have good health insurance. You know, for those of us with DCM, you have to think in terms of a chronic medical condition on top of all your normal concerns. That understanding is really, really important. And when we talk about insurance in general, I think we need to keep in mind that insurance agencies are run by humans and humans make mistakes. And so in all things, snafus can happen. But I think it's important for us to also remember that they can be resolved. So as a little side story, about a week before my ICD procedure, I was told that it would not be covered. My insurance agency apparently had lost some paperwork and said they were not going to cover it. And everything came out in the wash, but it took a few phone calls and a little bit of persistence. And I think that really serves almost as a warning to all of us that we have to advocate for ourselves, and we have to keep in mind that we have to go through these processes so that we're ensured that our insurance is going to cover everything that it needs to cover. So keep in mind that resolution process takes a little bit of time. Now, the first couple of years I was dealing with DCM, it gave me some time to figure out about what my average cost would be in terms of my medications, and also what my average cost would be for regular routine tests. And that was really helpful and really important for me to create a budget that would cover those costs for the month and also for the year. Once I had that information, I just divvied up my costs and created kind of an average savings so I wouldn't be as surprised each month. And I think when we're dealing with unexpected costs, this can be a way to really reduce our stress and help us focus on the healing process and focus on our health and not our wallets. So I would really recommend creating that budget with DCM in mind and giving yourself a little bit of wiggle room. Now, of course, we want to talk about insurance. Insurance is really complicated, but it's a series of rules and we can always figure that out. And I think when we talk about insurance, it's really important for us to talk about how we advocate for ourselves, how we appropriately ask those questions. So insurance in itself is going to cover some of our costs. There's always associated costs that are going to be over and above. We're always going to have out-of-pocket costs. And when we're thinking about covering those, it's important to recognize that hospitals are in this with us. So a lot of healthcare providers have offices that work almost like financial aid offices do at colleges. Some hospitals have grant programs to help patients pay their bills and to help cover costs. And I think that's really important for us to ask about when we're in these situations where we have large costs coming at us. There are options out there. As an example, one hospital I work with has a lot of grant programs, and I know a cancer patient who had all of their medication covered through some of these grant programs. And it was just through basically an add-on to the billing office that helps patients pay for their meds. So there are things like that out there, but you do have to ask questions. So I just want to encourage you to talk to your healthcare providers and ask them if they have any services like that, any financial support services for patients. Another thing to keep in mind with insurance in general is you want to make sure that your procedures are pre-authorized. And pre-authorization is a process that your healthcare provider will usually begin, and they will send information to your insurance provider saying this is a therapy that's needed. The pre-authorization process is basically your insurance carrier saying, yes, we agree that therapy is needed and we will cover it or we will pay for it. Now, there can be cases where you have to get that pre-authorization before they will say it's okay to get a procedure, and you don't ever want to be in a position where costs are denied or a procedure is denied simply due to a lack of paperwork. So I always want to encourage people to ask about that pre-authorization process, make sure that it went through, and make sure they have all the information that they need. Along those same lines, a lot of insurance carriers are now starting what they call concierge service. And a concierge service is essentially one-stop shopping for helping patients. Concierge services provide basically a phone line where you can call and reach a live person and ask any questions about your insurance. Now, this is usually something that your employer will contract with the insurance agency to provide. So you want to double check that you have this. But if concierge service is available in your area, I would highly recommend you take advantage of it. It's a way to cut through a lot of that red tape. Now, also, when we talk about insurance in general, we need to talk about the medical billing process. And this industry is a really interesting one, and it's based entirely on codes. So I think it's important for us to recognize that, just as we talked about, humans are humans and we can all make mistakes, we can also make mistakes that are simple typos sometimes. And so you want to double check everything that you're billed for. Anything that you see on your explanation of benefits, any bills that come through the mail, you really want to take the time to make sure that those charges make sense. And many times it can just be a question of a medical billing code that was a little bit off. And that can be handled between your healthcare provider and your insurance carrier, and they can kind of work that out. The process that we go through a lot of times when we're questioning medical billing charges is called an appeal process. And essentially we're appealing the decision that was made by an insurance agency. And while this can sound big and bad, really a lot of times all it is asking your insurance agency to go back through what was billed and double check for accuracy. And so if we find any mistakes, it gives them a chance to reconcile and to go back through and authorize what they should have authorized. So long story short, I think the main takeaways when we think about these things are always keep our chronic disease in mind and always keep that the focus. Don't let the financial kind of take away from that process. It's really important in your life. So get it the best insurance that you can. If you're going for a new job, make sure they have good insurance. Always remember that we can ask questions at any time, including, is there financial support available? Is there anything that I don't know about that might help me pay this bill? And also, we can always appeal. It's just asking folks to go back over the information. So there's nothing wrong with that. With all these considerations in mind, I want to bring up one more action item, if you will, that I think is really important. And that's creating boundaries in our lives. I think a lot of times we don't take the time to recognize that managing a chronic illness can be a full-time job in and of itself. So I think it's helpful as patients to decide what we can do comfortably and then organize everything else around that. I hear a lot of people talk about this in terms of having margins for their life. And so I think you want to create healthy boundaries so that you have margins that allow you to live your life. So one of the best pieces of advice that I was given is only spend 1 day a week dealing with finances and insurance. Don't let it take over your entire life. Keep in mind that you really want to keep your focus on healing and getting better. And this needs to be secondary. So to the extent you can, decide how much time you're comfortable spending on these things, and then kind of keep boundaries around them so that they don't take over every piece of your life. I think it's really important for us as DCM patients to protect our time and to realize that time is our most precious resource. So with that said, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed being here with you today, and have a great rest of the conference.
So a great thank you to Sarah for submitting that video and those tips. So we're going to move into the Q&A portion. And again, please put your questions into the Q&A feature. Any questions about living with DCM? And in Sarah's place today, because Sarah couldn't be here, we are joined by Greg Roof. And for those of you who may not know, Greg is the executive director and board president of the DCM Foundation. So thanks for joining us. And you guys can all be unmuted if you'd like, because we'll just kind of roll through some questions here. So first of all, thank you all for being here. Oh, well, that's sweet. That's a nice thank you note from Sweden. So I love that. So let's go to the first question. How have you had to change cardiologists, and how do you determine when to change cardiologists? Anybody want to take that? Andrea?
I haven't had to change cardiologists, but I will say I've gotten about 4 different opinions from different cardiologists. So this maybe is not the most practical approach, but I have my main cardiologist who is in my city. And then I travel once a year to another city to get another consultation, just to make sure, kind of like what Stephanie said, to make sure, everything is on track. But I think I just kind of got very lucky in being referred to someone who had expertise in genetic DCM. But I think a question is, if you don't feel like comfortable or if that's the right fit, not just with expertise, but if you don't have a comfortable relationship, I think that's also really important, because you really need to foster trust with your provider.
Stephanie or Greg, did you want to weigh in on that at all?
Stephanie, I'm sure you have over 40 years. Give it a shot, then I'll follow up.
Okay. I was at a cardiologist in a big hospital, a transplant team, and they decided to all leave. So that left me without a cardiologist or a transplant team. So I was a little bit afraid there. So I went to another hospital in a big city that's near me. And it's really scary having to change cardiologists. But once you're there, they make you feel comfortable and they get all your medical records. So you don't have to worry. And then they're going to all do their tests anyways, because they're not going to trust what the previous guy did on their tests. So, so they're going to get all the same answers or whatever answers they determine. But and it's not as scary as it sounds.
Well, thanks, Stephanie. Greg, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, so I started at one institution. I'm in Columbus, Ohio, about 2.5 hours away. And in finding out that I had genetic cardiomyopathy, I found Dr. Hirschberger, which was co-founder of the DCM Foundation, probably, historically leading researcher on genetics and diabetic cardiomyopathy. He actually was at Ohio State University Ross Heart Hospital. And then my next door neighbor was worked for a device company, sales manager Midwest, and recommended there was an electrophysiologist at Ohio State that he thought was probably the best in the Midwest. And so it was 20 minutes away, and I found two great docs, and it was easy, and they did a wonderful job. And I also think, one thing you have to look at too, you may have internationally known huge institutions, but chances are you're going to get the B team, C team, where Ross Heart Hospital here at Ohio State is smaller. It's not internationally known just because it's smaller, but again, it's a teaching facility. You get a team approach. Given the research that's done, they're going to be up on all leading things. But my belief was I was really going to get the A team, and I did get the A team. And also remember, when you're traveling through, heart failure, and if it worsens, it continues to worsen, it's a real team approach. I mean, you can get hooked on one doc, but when you're in the hospital, you're going to see who's on duty, right? There's a rotation. So I mean, it's not only just looking at the one doc, it's looking at the facility, and it's also looking at the entire team. And are you comfortable with the 3 or 4 heart failure specialists you may be dealing with, the nurse practitioners, things like that? So that is my story. And I did switch, but fairly early on in my disease recognition.
No, that's great feedback. Thank you, Greg. Just a side note here. This woman said, my cardiologist changed me. He sent me to a different specialist. And I'm wondering if it could be because they wanted her to go to someone who specialized in DCM heart failure and so forth. So that's interesting. Let's see. Robin said, Stephanie, have you had the opportunity to mentor with other families who have been encumbered with the genetic trait of heart failure like DCM in their family with young children like your own? And I'll just add that Stephanie runs 2 amazing Facebook groups that are DCM specific. And Stephanie, if you want to talk to those and then about how you mentor families in general through that.
Yeah, that's my passion. I really, really like to help families, because especially when they have children or grandchildren that are diagnosed with cardiomyopathy, they don't know what to do. And I get phone calls all day, all night. I get private messages all day, all night. And some people just want to talk to me and vent. Like, well, what do we do about housing, or how do we afford the gas to go 4 hours away, once a week? Or, they have issues, and it's really, really important for me to help other people through this. I've seen the ins and outs, lows and highs, and it's also good for me to hear other people's stories. It really helps me to help explain it to other people. So yeah, I have 2 cardiomyopathy Facebook pages, and they have approximately 7,000 people, and I'm on them all day long. So feel free to, if you want to talk to me, feel free to, private message me.
Oh, that's wonderful, Stephanie. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
And her
right.
groups are very
Stephanie,
active. Go ahead.
Stephanie a real hero here.
Yes.
We don't recognize her. She doesn't get recognized. No, she doesn't want recognition. But not only does she live with this disease for 40 years, ejection fraction down in the teens, back up again, involves her family so a lot. But in the last 15 years, her basically unpaid full-time job has been supporting patients and family members with DCM. And so, sorry about this, Stephanie, but I mean, if you look at the tens of thousands of hours, tens and tens of thousands of hours she's put in helping people. So I just want to say, we look at heroes here. I mean, Stephanie is at the top of the heap of anyone in the DCM world. So sorry for that.
Well, thank you, Greg. My head just kind of exploded there.
You still look great, though. You still look great.
Thanks.
This person said, I am starting cardiac rehab next week. What should I expect? Greg, I know you've been through that. Andrea, probably not yet, obviously. Stephanie, have you been through cardiac rehab?
Yeah, a few times.
Okay, so maybe Stephanie and Greg, if you wanted to speak to that a little bit, what to expect in cardiac rehab.
Steph, you want to start? You want me to start? Or
I'll start because mine's pretty quick. I always get pooped out and quit. So, I mean, then I
take back everything I said.
Yeah. No, I then I end up going to yoga or Pilates because that's easier for me to do. So.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's really valuable feedback. It's funny though.
It's good. I'm a big proponent of it. And the reason being is, one, if you can get insurance to pay for it and your doc to prescribe it, or doctor prescribe it and insurance to pay for it, one, it's a motivation of actually having to go so many times a week. Two, you're supervised by trained professionals. They put some, like a simple ECG on you. They monitor your heart the whole time. So if we all, I think, with DCM might have some type of fear about exercising, how do I push too hard? What happens? What this happens? It really is nice because you can get in a very controlled, safe setting and learn how to exercise safely. And they'll teach you that. And that's something, once it ends, you can go do on your own, which I think is important. So I'm a huge proponent. I think anybody with DCM, if you can get your doctor to prescribe it and you can get your insurance to pay for it, I think you should do it, because I think it's really, really important for you to be able to learn how to exercise safely with this disease. And it's different for everybody, but they'll help you with that. So.
And if you get pooped out and quit, try yoga or Pilates. Okay.
There you go.
What has been most helpful to you to keep you calm and centered through this journey? Andrea, I know you're still in the early stages of this journey. Have you found anything that kind of centers you?
I think for me, it's trying to get involved and see what I can do to manage my own care and change health outcomes for other people. And one friend asked if we started meditating, and it said, for me, it was no. I reached out to the DCM Foundation. I'm very, very grateful to have found Greg and you and the resources there. I'm in one of the patient support groups and have become really good friends with some other patients. And I think that has been a real way to channel some of my energy and anxiety around it and moving something forward, because we can control parts of our health, like our diet and exercise, but there's a lot of parts of DCM that you cannot control. You can follow every rule, and the numbers might not go in the right direction. So I think for me, it's trying to work outside. Okay, what can I do and channel my energy to help other people? So that's been, and then for me, it's the exercise has been a point of contention in kind of the differing opinions I've had, but for me, it's finding a way to maintain exercise. If it's not, doing long distance running, it's walking or doing yoga and just trying to find a way to remain active. And that's a huge stress relief for me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Greg, Stephanie, any tips on how to stay calm? I mean, Greg, you just went through a heart transplant a little over a year ago. How did you stay calm and centered? You've been through a lot recently.
Yeah, psychedelics, basically. No, I'm joking. I'm a little punchy. So, it is preparation. I mean, I think anything in life worthwhile takes a lot of work and a lot of preparation. And if you've seen some of the videos I've done going through the transplant, I really believe, it's a tough disease and it's tough to handle physically, mentally. And I think when you're facing potential death, spiritually. And so I think, I always exercised a lot. I always pushed it too far. Cardiac rehab kept me from probably hurting myself more than I did, because I did a few times, exercising too hard with the disease. And so I think, but I try to stay as physically fit as possible. I mean, you're in a war here. You have this disease. It is a full out war that you have to fight. And if you want to be successful, you've got to prepare yourself. And so it's physical, mental. I started seeing a therapist 3 or 4 years ago, as my disease, like Steve's, was kind of a, downhill slide like this over 7 years. And so I prepare myself for what's next and how do I do it, and how do I best do it. And what I found, though, also with the mental therapy and the preparation with that, is that it made me happier. So, you can go through this disease and physically feel terrible at times, but you don't have to feel mentally terrible. I mean, it's interesting how those two are completely separated. So I would, again, and I think that's whether it's groups, and DCM Foundation has got a few, and we're going to be adding more. But I think it's just really preparation. I'm not being afraid to ask for help, because we all need help. And the spiritual side, I think whatever your spirituality is, or religion is, or lack thereof, I think when I was getting ready for the transplant, you have to be okay with everything. You've got to just submit and say, here I am, and I'm okay. And that was really, really helpful. So, but I think be active and prepare for it. So,
no, you've been inspirational to watch through the whole process.
Or maybe just a little thick to know any difference. Maybe that's.
I didn't want to say anything, but
yes, you worked with me every day.
I'm a little punchy too after 6 hours. Stephanie, do you have anything to add? Because I don't even know if you remember so much a time before you were diagnosed, but what can you add to then?
I had a pediatric cardiologist tell me one time, Stephanie, don't panic unless we do. And how often do you see a doctor panic? Not that often. My youngest daughter was worked up for the transplant list 5 separate times. And she's never had a transplant yet. And they do get a little restless, these doctors and the nurses, and they try to hurry you through the process. But they never really panic. So I can always look at them and say, okay, they're not panicking, so I'm not going to panic.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like somebody said, when you're on an airplane, and you don't see, if you think something's going wrong and you look at the flight attendants and they seem to be just totally relaxed, then you just need to chill out, right? I mean, it's
right.
easier said than done.
If I can add one more thing too, and I think it goes back to what Adam said, and I don't know why I forgot this, humor. You've got to have, you can find humor in anything, and things can get and got pretty rough for me, and it can be a little tough. But you can look at it sort of funny, isn't this silly, isn't that, or whatever happened. Have a good sense of humor. Be able to joke at your situation, joke it. I think you can keep your humor. that helps a lot too. So sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Working with Adam, he has too much humor. He was playing pranks on me. So he's something. What is your first step when an insurance claim comes back as uncovered? Has anybody dealt with that? Andrea, you're smiling ear
Yes.
to ear. Okay.
I give it to my husband and say, can you deal with this? That
Is
in
he
my
available
case-
for everybody? No.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's just the division, I definitely do the bulk of, all the medical care, that's in my household that falls into his jurisdiction. But I think as Sarah mentioned, it's hard not to panic, but give a call, because I think sometimes there are just errors, or it's like you didn't fill out some question, and it has happened and it was resolved. But I mean, it's not a great feeling to get a thousands of dollar bill that you weren't expecting to get. But yeah, call. And I think it's just persistence and getting on the phone until you actually talk to a person. But yeah.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Stephanie, I'm sure over 40 years, you've gotten maybe one or two of those.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I appeal it. And 9 times out of 10, they pay for it.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah. And I think, Sarah in her video, sorry she couldn't be here, but she did a really good job, because a lot of it's clerical, a lot of it's, I mean, if you're going to see the docs a lot, you're going to get these. And part of it, I think insurance companies just deny a certain percentage of things just to make sure people are watching and paying attention. It will happen a lot. I always take the stance of let the medical provider and insurance company work it out. So I don't really get excited, and I don't pay anything until those guys get their dance done. So my bills don't get paid overnight. And Ohio State was great about that. Like, they never really billed me until they danced with insurance companies for 30, 60 days. And so, but monthly you're getting denial bills or whatever. Don't get excited, appeal, call somebody, and realize that this is part of the process, but do not back down and do not go away.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question. When you have limited energy, Greg, I swear to God, this doesn't apply to you. But anyhow, when you have limited energy and can only accomplish a few things, how do you make the choices on, what you do, when you do it, how you do it? And Stephanie, you and I have talked a lot about that, and I was hoping maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah. Well, when my kids were little, of course, my kids, took precedent. I would lay on the floor with them. And it just always helped when I was on the floor for some reason. And then I could help my kids, or, and then, I had to cook dinner for my family. So I would sit on a stool. You just have to prioritize. You always have to take care of yourself, so you can take care of your children. And if your house isn't dusted in a month, don't worry. It'll get dusted at some point. You just have to try to prioritize your needs and then your children's needs. And that's, it's a struggle. It really is a struggle.
I know on prior webinars, you've mentioned that you break things down into very smaller chunks. So you may just, if you do decide to vacuum, you just vacuum one room maybe today. You don't vacuum the whole house, right?
No, definitely not. Or if you're cleaning bathrooms, just do the showers. And then the next day, do the rest of the bathroom. But yeah, no, you'll always have to break it up, so you can do other things that you need to get done that day.
This reminds me that I just want to let people know, if you haven't been out to the DCM Foundation website, definitely go out there and look at, we have all of our videos posted of all of the prior webinars, and they're fantastic. Stephanie was on one with us. Of course, Greg's been on many of them. but all of the tips and advice and topics are really fantastic, and they can't all be covered in one session. So let's see, a couple more questions, and then we have some interesting wrap-up information. So I just encourage people, if you're still on, please just hang on a little bit more, because Greg has some really exciting information coming up. This is the good question. This is my question. What is the one takeaway you would like people to know from your experience with DCM? Greg, I know you have more than one, but what would you tell people from your experience, since 2014 when you were diagnosed?
And probably before then, because I was undiagnosed, misdiagnosed for a decade before that too, So, I think that we all have mitigating circumstance in our lives. We all have issues. Well, everybody does, whatever it might be. And so I think that, understand that and try to live the fullest, happiest life you can, no matter what your situation is. And that's the therapy. And that's what I really looked at is, again, everybody has issues and everybody has problems. And that doesn't mean that you have to stop living your life. You have to alter it a little bit, as a lot of people do. And you can still be happy. You can still live a very, very happy life. And so I think that's the things I said. We all go through rough spots. We all go through trying times. And it's not really what you went through or the times that you're going through or went through. It's really your response to it. How do you want to be seen by the people around you, and your kids or your family or your friends, about how you responded to that difficult situation? I think that's really, and I always wanted for people to say, he responded as well as he could. That was important to me, So I think it's tough. It's difficult. I know I've gone through it. It kind of sucks at times, but it does suck at times. But I think everybody can be strong and make the most of it. And I also realized this wasn't the only difficult time in my life, and it's not going to be the last difficult time of my life. But that's life, and that's what makes it fun, right?
That is life. Absolutely. Does anybody else want to answer the question? What's the one takeaway you'd like people to know from your experience with DCM?
I think I actually got this maybe from a DCM webinar I joined early on, but I think there's always hope and there's always options. And ultimately, it's a gift to know. I think especially if you're someone like me and you've never had a symptom, like as hard as it is to take in this information, I'm so grateful that I know, and I can do whatever I can to, slow progression or maximize, my quality of life. And, and I think everyone's talked about Google, when you first Google things, even knowing that my dad had lived for decades with this, you think, oh my gosh, I have 5-10 years. It's not the case. There's so many things here. There are so many things coming. And knowing that you have this disease, you can explore so many options. So it's not the end of the line. There is hope, and there's lots of options for you. So don't get discouraged.
Oh, fantastic message. Thank you, Andrea. Stephanie, do you have anything to add?
Just live your best life at, the best you can every day.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Really fantastic. I am going to wrap up this panel. I'm going to just say thank you to the three of you for being on today. Thank you to Sarah for her recorded version of her presentation. And it's just been such a pleasure getting to know everybody's story. And I really think this whole conference is about hope for the future. And what I'd like to do is wrap up today by bringing Greg back on, and he'll have some closing remarks and thank yous. But I just wanted to personally thank all of today's presenters. It's been nothing but a pleasure working with everyone to prepare for this event over the past couple of months. So thank you for all of your time and participation on a Saturday for the live event. So thank you so much again. And thank you again to Heather behind the scenes. And now I'll go over to Greg for some closing remarks. Thanks, Greg. Over to you.
Again, thanks, Jan and Heather. And really thanks, Jan. And absolutely amazing, wonderful job today. She did on the nights and weekends because we had some staff reductions for family reasons. But thank you, Jane. You did an absolutely wonderful job. Also, again, to all of you, to all DCM patient family members, those that attended, thanks again. We hope, let us know how we can help you better and what we can do. And let us know if you'd like to help us. I think I've gotten an email so far, someone wanting to help. Thank you so much. You're not alone in your journey, and you could have a lot of other people on your support team. Again, the presenters giving up their Saturday, they spent a lot of time putting their presentations together. Thank you so much. Our partner patient groups, I'll give a shout out to Stefan at Lemonade Cardiac. I know he was .org out of the Netherlands, or maybe he's in Spain now. Thanks for coming, and you know, you're going to see more on our partners. That's really important. We can't do this alone. We're going to rely heavily on you and our partners for help. And lastly, of course, our generous sponsors that you heard from, quite a few of them today. Thank you so much. Without their financial support and I think intellectual support and scientific support, there's no way we'd be able to do what we do. So thank you, everyone, and what a wonderful day. Jan?
Thanks so much. Next slide.
You go ahead and do it if you want.
Whatever works for you. Actually, Greg, I really think you want to talk to the fourth bullet, so I'll let you run this.
Oh, yeah. So thank you. So you can see who's really in charge of the foundation. Again, if you visit our website, www.dcmfoundation.org, we're going to make some changes in Q4. Content will stay the same. Navigation, we're going to try to make it a little bit easier. We've got our Healthy Living program launch on October 25th, which a few of you had questions on. I don't know if that's up on our website just yet. The link on the homepage, it will be very soon, probably next week, and we'll also be sending I think a newsletter email to everyone about that. We're very excited about that program. There is a cost to it, but we have 15 scholarship programs that we're offering. If financially you cannot afford it, we'd be happy to help you attend this program for free. We're going to have a list of heart failure specialists that's going to come out very soon. That is something that's been lacking. We've been needing to add, but we've been having a very difficult time finding a good resource for that. We think we've got some. So you ought to be seeing something the next month about that. Follow us, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn for regular updates. And also, again, we'll be having a huge campaign starting Q1 of 2023 about, it's a consortium that we've created with our partners, Genetic Cardiomyopathy Awareness Consortium, about understanding the genetics of cardiomyopathy and talk about getting tested and next steps and things like that. So we're very excited about what's coming up. So next slide, please. And lastly, please hold the date for our next webinar, which will be Wednesday, December 7th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Eastern Time with Doug Raychek, Living with an ICD or Pacemaker. We've done this before, and these are really, really popular, and you'll be able to get a lot of information from that. So again, Jan?
Again, thank you to everyone. Thank you to all the patients and family members who've participated in today's event. Thank you for all the wonderful questions. If you have questions that you feel weren't answered today, please feel free to email me directly, and I'll try to get those questions answered by the appropriate people. My email address is jrock, J-R-O-C-K, @dcmfoundation.org. Again, thank you to everyone. Thanks to Greg for helping create this foundation and helping so many people around the globe. So that's it for today. Thank you all. Stay safe and be well. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll hope to see you on December 7th.
Thanks.
Take care for now. Thanks again to Heather. Bye-bye.